What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now, a couple of days ago, I sat down with the man, the myth, the legend that is Zachary Hickmore. Good friend of mine, currently kind of my training partner and a sports psychology consultant. This basically means he's got a degree in psychology, he's done his master's and he's in the process of kind of like his clinical training effectively. We sat down to discuss all things psychology in regards to health and fitness, and specifically in regards to goal setting, and taking that one step further, why people seem to set the same goal 10 times, which in and of itself is suggestive that they've failed up to 9. Prepare to learn things like how to balance a well-rounded lifestyle whilst trying to improve your health so you can indulge without shame or guilt. How to identify whether the goal that you set is actually yours or whether or not it's just something that you've inherited from friends and family or from social media. How to stop focusing on the result and start to be more process-driven and focused for this goal. And how to follow through with this process to make sure that the goal does actually happen. This is how the discussion went, guys. Really hope you enjoy it. Check this out. Zach, thank you for coming on, mate. Welcome to the channel.
Oh, thank you.
Excited?
Good to be here. Definitely. Nice to chat in this really formal context.
I know. This
That's
is
why I
weird.
wore shorts. Yeah, it's great.
It's why you wore shorts.
Yeah.
Always the constant formal wear.
Well, yeah, sports psychology kind of outfit is like chinos, brown shoes, navy chinos normally. Like
Of course.
Collared shirt with probably a jumper over that. You know, no biceps showing, no thigh, alone pasty thighs.
No thigh, you don't want to tease them a little bit?
No. I think that's the difference between our career paths and like that aesthetic side, is that my clients seeing me with my shirt off isn't always the best way to do things. But you know, different strokes for different folks.
But what about if the purpose of that interaction is to teach them how to deal with distractions?
Oh yeah, actually that's quite a good one. I won't do it with my youth clients, but I'd definitely suggest, like don't look at my nipples while I talk to you.
Yeah, stay focused. Just turn up in a bow tie, a big smile, and nothing else. And be like, maintain eye contact. This is your psychology test right now.
Yeah, exactly. So we call those automatic ambient neural activity. So blocking out ambient neural activity, or ANAs. So that would be quite a good one, because there'll be plenty of distractible things in that kind of interaction.
I love that you offer like a legit long, convoluted academic name for rocking up to see a client in a bow tie and nothing else. There's a name for that.
That's it. This is kind of what we were saying just before about like I can evidence my work. So
yeah, exactly.
Just
I can reference
process.
why this is good. Just buy into it. Right, mate. So you are sports psychology consultant, which I believe is your pending title at the moment. So you've got your degree, you've got your master's, and you're in the process of training to become a clinical sports psychologist, right?
So practitioner sports psychologist. So I register with the Healthcare Professionals Council, and that'll be my long academic road. Maybe not an end, but at least I think that'll be the final kind of major hoop that we'll jump through to be able to ethically do what I do.
Okay. Yeah. To ethically do what you do.
Yeah, especially after the comments that we just
made. Exactly.
I think, you know, maybe there's a few things I need to learn, and that's why I'm here.
Don't worry, this isn't a heavy cancel culture channel. You'll be fine. Obviously, the word sport is in your title. One of the kind of the main objectives with this. So I did a YouTube video about a week ago called Marine Mindset, kind of episode 1, and it was basically a few things that have helped me over the years. Not only set goals, I think there are enough. I think that are ample kind of templates of how to review what's working and what's not in your life, and therefore go and set a goal. I do, however, think it is under-investigated why so many people have to set the same goal so many times, and that in and of itself, that statement is suggestive of the fact that people fail numerous times. That's why they're setting the same one. So taking kind of the sport context out of it and just looking at more of a kind of a general health and fitness paradigm, that's one conversation that I'm super intrigued to chat to you about why so many people might A, continue to fail on the same thing, B, obviously how they can kind of correct that, and then see where that kind of the rest of that dialogue kind of leads us. So I don't want this to be overly scripted. We'll just kind of take a deep dive into that, if that makes sense. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's the right time to be talking about this. What are we, 9 days into January or so, and I wonder how many people have failed their New Year's resolutions, and I wonder how many people already knew that they were going to fail them when they've gotten to this point. Personally, I'm doing dry January for the first time. The term dry January, I'm just taking a break from having a few drinks, because when I was in South Africa over Christmas, I did not take a break from them for a minute. So, you know, my goals are necessary to kind of, well, for my health and wellness. But that's my own personal kind of thing. And I think that kind of leads to my first point is when we're setting goals, they need to be personal. I'm not doing dry January because it's a trend. I'm doing something that is a necessary change in my life that I've decided personally through my own volition that this is something that I not only want to do, but I should do because I know that it'll be good for me. Bridging that gap between I know what's good for me, you know, for any of us, we've got the internet. You know, we know what's good for us. We can Google it. This is pretty damn simple. If you want any knowledge, I have.
So lack of knowledge is not the problem.
Lack of knowledge isn't the problem. I mean, I've studied for however many years, but in terms of content, it's all on the internet. If I want access to it, I just look it up and yeah, I know where to look because maybe my lecturer has told me. But I mean, I think anyone can find access to these things. But then how do we bridge the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it? That's often the issue. And there's so many trends out there, like dry January, like October, just to go with like the alcohol side of things, but also New Year's resolutions. That's a trend. What's the difference between December and January? It's not like you're suddenly rebirthed into the world as this fresh-faced person who now has all these opportunities, but you had to wait for the 1st of January.
Yeah, it's not a human phoenix moment. We are the same people.
Yeah,
it's a social construct that kind of buys it. I think the only thing that might kind of naturally offer itself to New Year's resolutions is that, in addition to the fact that New Year's resolutions is a trend, as you say, is that over the Christmas period, it is quite commonly in a very busy Western world, it is a period of natural decompression. Sometimes the only period of natural decompression where people aren't working, they're back with their family, and it can be kind of a reset, an environmental reset, and that might elicit a little bit of reflection and time to actually think. So I think that combined with the fact that it's like, you'll have everyone asking you if you've set any New Year's resolutions. I mean, one thing I will say quickly is I believe that a lot of people that are watching this video now and kind of follow me in the channel are fairly naturally ambitious people. They're either competitive sports people or sub-elite recreational sports people at a high level where it's taken seriously. They're either prepping for or serving in the military. And I think with that, there is this linking that natural kind of all or nothing personality type to the kind of the new setting and adherence to new goals and new habits. Is that I think, and I've absolutely 100% fallen prey to this myself in the past for many, many, many years, and it's probably, I'm 33 now, only in the last couple of years that I'm not, is that people become an absolute Puritan with a new habit, and they believe that I believe, I kind of own my experience of it, that there is no such thing as a bloody spectrum with this. There's just two buckets. You either adhere to this new thing 100% of the time, or you've failed. Yeah. And I think that, it's either tick in the box, you've done it, and you can only say, and the only way of passing it is you have done it literally every day, 365 years later until the next kind of New Year's Day, or you've failed. And I think with that mindset, for me, the deck is just absolutely stacked in the favour of you losing.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So kind of first point there is definitely not bashing New Year's resolutions. I completely agree. Natural decompression, it does tend to happen when you've got a little bit of extra time off, and I hope that some people did manage to get some time off over the Christmas period. It's a nice time to have that. But that we should be doing things for ourselves, not because other people are doing them. So if your natural decompression happens in the summer, and maybe that's the time where you want to review things and check, okay, right, I've kind of peaked work-wise, I've taken some time off over the summer, or I kind of feel like I need a change, or that I'm ready to take that change. And sometimes that change comes out of necessity. So you've gone through a time of binging and you're like, wow, I really need to sort my stuff out. I need to change. Or if you just kind of, if you naturally reflect on your life and you're quite self-aware, then maybe you go, right, okay, these are the things that I want to achieve. So when we're setting our goals, we need to know, well, what and why? What do I want to achieve and why do I want to achieve it? Is it a personal goal? Is it because I've seen someone on Instagram that's suddenly doing this and now, well, actually I'm going to do it too? That's not personal. That's something I've seen. It's almost like a vicarious goal. So sure, maybe you see someone and it completely resonates with you and you're like, that is exactly what I want to be doing. But if you have that feeling, I would say reflect on it. Check within yourself. Does this really resonate with me? Is this actually how I want to be, or is that am I a 60 kilo man that wants, seeing someone who weighs 100 kilos and incredibly muscular, I want to be like that. I'm going to dedicate my life to that. It doesn't sound like that quite matches what you've been doing with your life. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, be realistic with yourself about what you're trying to achieve. And is that something you're going to enjoy achieving? Being on making it personal, really, does it resonate with you? Ask that question many times. Look at the rest of your life. And if it does, brilliant. Then, you're on the right track. And then looking at the all or nothing kind of spectrum approach, firstly, a bit of self-care. A lapse is not a relapse. If something doesn't go right, let's say I'm trying to avoid chocolate, then I have a chocolate. That doesn't mean I've now failed and I have to wait until the 1st of January next year, especially on the 9th of January or wherever we are. That's a long time to just give up. Quite often a day at a time is a great shift. One of the reasons behind that is, and this is something I'm quite passionate about, is building our self-regulatory processes. So how do we self-regulate? How do we adapt to an ever-changing environment? Because the world we live in today, it is always changing, and there's so much information out there that you might find out that what you thought was right one day isn't right the next day, and then suddenly, if we're too adaptable and too fluid in how we think, then we might eat that chocolate and go, I'm actually fine, and then just carry on with that. We might realize that that's okay, or someone might say that that's okay, and I just go, yeah, it's fine. But if we can learn to just change slowly to achieve our goal and start incorporating these changes into our lives, we're more likely to achieve it. So that all or nothing approach, just cutting things off. It's like smokers that go cold turkey. They often put on weight because they are trying to achieve this one thing. So other things kind of go. And we kind of have to accept that. So to kind of go along that ramble is try do one thing. So don't change, don't pick 5 things you want to change about your life and try change them all at the same time. Something's going to give. Pick one thing. So what's the one thing that's going to lead you to the progress that you want?
Yeah, I mean, we
stick with that.
We spoke about this the other day, didn't we? And it's good that you said that, because that is consistent with what I put in my video last week. And that is something that I think is absolutely huge, and it's something that I heard on a podcast recently. And I remember from one of your workshops back kind of like in the summer in 2021, you were talking about a certain amount of like energy you actually, like there's literally a certain kind of energy or neurotransmitter or something in the brain that provides you with enough fuel to actually change your routine and your habit, and there's only a limited amount of it. So that's one of the reasons I spoke in my last video about the idea of only changing one thing at a time. And I spoke to you when we were having coffee the other day about the fact that I wanted to start training a little bit earlier in the day, and I started wanting to follow ROMWOD every single day in the morning. And I was like, what I'm going to do is I'm actually only going to allow myself to pick one of these for a couple of reasons. And I chose the ROMWOD one, and I've done it every single, it's only the 9th of January, thank you. And I've done it every single day this year so far. And one of the benefits of that is A, I've been super consistent. B, it's the only thing that I'm now thinking about. All of my energy, my new habit energy is based on that, not, oh crap, what else was I supposed to do today? And the third thing is that I'm starting to now develop a narrative that at 33 I've never really had, which is, flipping heck, I'm absolutely capable of setting a new goal and actually doing it. Whereas I think the more frequently that over the course of my life I have set targets, 15, 20 at a time, which is obviously unbelievably unrealistic, and something's going to fall down and that kind of house of cards is going to collapse, it reinforces a narrative that I can't do it. Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, flipping heck, I did it, failed. In terms of a couple of the things that you mentioned, I want to just kind of rewind a little bit to the idea of that vicarious goal that you were just talking about. So that's the phrase that I'm familiar with is something called mimetic desire, which is this idea that some of the things that we not only outwardly say that we want, but we genuinely believe that we want, aren't actually our goals, and they're not our objectives, and they're not our desires, and they're not our preferences. We just inherit them from different people, from people that we look up to, from people that we're inspired by, from social media, from whatever. And I think that is an incredibly foundationally important thing, and I also believe that's a reason that a lot of people probably wouldn't stay consistent with something, because if it was something they truly cared about, it's more likely to kind of happen. So how can people, is there a broadly applicable process that people can go through? I say broadly applicable, so to most people, that they could go through like a list of questioning or something to ascertain whether or not what they are saying they want to achieve is actually what they want to achieve? Is there a way that they could find out whether or not that is actually their goal?
Yeah, I really like this this kind of simple breakdown from a guy called Frank Dick, who says the basics to goal setting are: what do you want, what's it going to cost, and are you willing to pay that price? Now, that to me is excellent, because what do I want? Well, I can say that. Okay, so let's say I've seen someone lifting, so if I want to snatch 150 kilos, so that's a big goal. I'm like, cool, right, I want to do that. That sounds amazing. I'm going to dedicate time to that. Okay, I know what I want. Okay, what does it cost? Now, what does it cost? That needs to be detailed. You know, do I know how much time that's going to take me? Do I know, you know, that's going to mean I'm going to need to dedicate my time working on my flexibility, all my accessory work, all the recovery time, that I'm potentially going to need to pack on some weight, because at my current lean mass, maybe I can't do that. You know, there's all these other things that I need to consider. And when I put all that together, then am I willing to pay that price? You know, that can only really honestly be answered when I know what that cost is in detail. So getting a full scope of what the requirements to achieve that goal are going to be, and going, well, is that realistic? Can I realistically do that? If I want to go and run an ultra marathon or something, and I go, cool, I'm going to do that. That's what I want. And so I start getting up in the morning, and other part early and running, you know, let's say like 100 miles a week or something, and other things in my life start suffering. I'm going to realize quite quickly that this cost is large to a lot of things in my life. So sometimes we only realize the full cost once we embark on that goal. And
which is too late.
It's too late, right. Exactly. And so then I'm either going to decide I've failed, or this goal is suddenly not going to mean as much to me. So those are probably the two risks to this, is that you either fail and then you get used to failing and assume that you are going to fail when you try and achieve something, or you're going to convince yourself that it's not as important anymore.
Okay.
And that often happens with big goals. So I've listed two things there that are quite difficult. For me, I assume I know I'm not going to run an ultra marathon. I don't want to at all. And snatching 150, I like setting goals like that because I like to get close. So that's just a personal one there. But am I realistically going to be able to sacrifice the time and effort and maybe push past a plateau that I assume is going to come a bit before that? I don't know yet, but it fits in with how my training is going in the moment and what I want to achieve. So realistically, yeah, I'm willing to pay the price for that up till I find out maybe it's going to cost more. But I'm not going to see that as a failure.
Yeah.
So
well, if you come close.
If I come close, yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things is, I don't want to achieve all my goals, because then what am I going to do? So I'd like to. So when I say 150, I'm actually in my head, I'm going 130 would be great. So
I was thinking that, I was like, 150 is enormous. 150 for a snatch. What the bloody? Okay, so that's good.
But yeah, so the danger is that we convince ourselves these things aren't so important anymore. But then we reduce from an ultra marathon to like, well, I'm not even going to run a 10K. So setting goals that are achievable. And having the short, medium, and long-term range. So this is where we spoke briefly when we were having coffee, is about scaffolding and how we can slowly implement things that lead to the bigger picture. But if we just have the big picture in mind, the effort to go there and the daily progress, we don't really experience that, because the daily progress from 0 to 100 miles for a run in one go is, what are you going to see in a day? And how are you going to stay motivated in a day if you don't have progress-based goals that mean as much to you, basically, as the final product?
So what I'm hearing you say there, kind of keep me on track if I kind of veer off, but people can set, one of the reasons that people may set goals and then not achieve them or have a negative association with believing that they failed is because they set a big goal, and not only might it be slightly unrealistic, because that's very kind of subjective, but they might be being unrealistic with the cost, and their expectations are inaccurate as to what it's going to cost. So they might think, right, I want to do this, and even though I'm already quite busy, don't worry, I'll still be able to fit in a 10K every morning. And it was like maybe a more again, the word realistic kind of gets a slightly bad rep in like the hardcore flipping hustle culture, but overall it does have a place, and people might need to be more realistic and be like, actually, with the pursuit of this goal, the time, effort, energy, and money required to achieve this goal, I acknowledge that something else is going to have to give. Fact. And you're saying that might be a much more realistic, like even playing devil's advocate and running it down and be like, okay, I know if I'm going to get up and run 3K, that's it, every morning. Not downplaying 3K. Get up, I don't run 3K. Get up and run 3K every morning. I know I'm going to be tired. I know that this might be a little bit harder. I know that I'm going to have to go to bed a little bit earlier, so I can't flip in watch as much TV in the evening. I know that I might be a little bit hungry. I know that my legs are going to hurt, so I am going to have to change my weight training routine a little bit. So just to be super, super, super honest and cutthroat with your own expectation management of the other lifestyle costs that are attributed to achieving that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I mean, you've kept me on track by asking me to keep you on track there.
Happy to help.
Understanding that cost, that is not it's not just time. It's not just, okay, it's just an hour out of my day, you know. That's not just it. When we've got 24 hours, we currently use those 24 hours in some way. So if we're going to change something, that means it's replacing something else. We are having to make a sacrifice. And I think a lot of people assume the sacrifice, well, they underestimate that sacrifice. I mean, I've wasted a lot of time assuming I could achieve many things without sacrificing anything, be it in my work, my studies, my fitness, you know, many things where I've gone, I can do it all. And then I realized there's certain things that have to start getting peeled back out of my day to achieve those things. And that's become my understanding of cost. You know, and yeah, fact is sometimes we only really realize what that cost is once we embark on that goal. And then we shouldn't see it as a failure. We just go, oh, right, okay, maybe I'm not prepared to do that. Maybe I got caught up in the hype of setting something new, and that motivation didn't last past the fading of those, you know, those words or that real hype that got instilled in me when I decided, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Because in my mind, hype does fade, but motivation is something that we need to keep consistent across our goal. Not easy, especially when we go, oh, I actually suck at running. You know, maybe this isn't, you know, I thought this was going to be easier. So I'd say, you know, give it a go. Don't see it as a failure. But, yeah.
Would you say hype is external then, and then motivation is internal? It's just interesting here, kind of. Yeah. How would you articulate the distinction between the two?
I think hype is surface level. I think hype is like, you know, hype can be a feeling, and you know, we have this endorphin rush that we have in fitness all the time. We're like, yeah, I love this, and then you actually work really hard. Like, I hate this, I hate this. I love the results, but man, this sucks. And you cannot maintain sustainable progress with purely hype.
Because it fades. Because it
definitely fades.
Because there's a huge like law of diminishing returns. And you see this a lot in the kind of the workshop and seminar world as well, in the world of entrepreneurship and kind of personal development, in the, you know, people like, not bad mouthing him at all actually, because I really do quite like him. I find him such a fascinating character. Someone like Tony Robbins as an example. Yeah. They are unbelievably good at the science of hype. Yeah. This is my observation of it, in that people leave there and they are probably just like bathing in these flipping neurotransmitters of feeling amazing, and they genuinely think blah, 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 blah. But the law of diminishing returns, or law of diminishing intent, I should say, does suggest that the way that you feel, the level of hype, the level of kind of commitment and dedication that you have now isn't going to be the same next year, next month, or tomorrow morning. So that is very, very fleeting. So I think developing ways to be like, right, I know I feel like this now, but I also accept that getting up at the crack of dawn to have a flipping ice bath in January isn't going to be as much of an attractive option now that I forget watching this documentary about how good it's going to be. It's going to start to feel shit very, very, very soon. So how would you say we do at least harness that and then try to bottle that and then keep motivation going? Yeah,
definitely. So I really wanted to jump in on this and say, I don't want to bash hype, because hype can get us through the door. And often that's the damn hardest thing to do. Man. And I think that's where a lot of these seminars, like Tony Robbins, for example, like, will just get people to take that first step, which often is the hardest thing. And I mean, there's levels of hype. There's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, like, you know, I get a little bit of a feeling I'm good. And then there's like, my life's been changed. This is what I'm meant to do. You know, you truly believe and you feel that. And that hype, I often pair hype with that euphoria. You know, that's got a bit of emotional, and that, as we say, like bathing in those neurotransmitters that are just kind of driving you forward on that chemical level. But then we need some continuity, and we need something that will stay. And this is quite a personal thing. So for me, I listened to this podcast a little while back, and the woman on there, she said that there's different flavors of motivation. So, and different people have different tastes, you've got a different palate. So when we talk about that spectrum of things, let's throw in another one, like a palate. So where, let's say, negative motivation gets a bit of a bad rap, you know, when you've got that drill sergeant kind of style thing, just telling you how shit you are to make sure that you can, you just do it, and you realize you've got no choice but to do it, because if you don't do it, you're the worst, like you are nothing. You know, what are you? You know, you'll have some experience with this. I've, you know, no military experience myself, but I'm just assuming that that's what it's like, because I've watched movies. So.
yeah, same thing.
I know.
So you do have military experience.
Oh, cool.
Exactly,
yeah, no, I do. I play paintball. I'm bad at
Pro.
it. But that can motivate, and some people respond really well to that. I played rugby with a guy, and he said, "You know what I really hate? I hate it when the coach tells me I can do something. I feel like he's undermining me. I feel like he's trying to tell me it's okay. You can do this." He says, "I hate it."
That's interesting.
He needs to be told, "You're useless." Then he's like, "I'm not, and I'll push myself." He responds really well to that. And there's times in my life where I'm like, yeah, I need to tell myself, like, Zach, you're an absolute failure if you don't do this. And I just smile to myself, because I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it, because that's not an acceptable thing to be for me. Like, especially on something small, like, Zach, just go out and do the shopping. Like, yeah, you've got to at least do that. And if I'm just not feeling motivated, and I do laugh at myself, because I'm like, it's going in quite hard on you for like just needing to go and do a couple of chores.
Yeah.
But then if I'm trying to achieve this ultra marathon goal, for example, and all I hear is negative motivation, how good am I going to feel when I achieve that? Because I've probably run myself into the ground verbally in my self-talk, in my mental kind of chatter to that point. And it can wear thin quite quickly. So we need some other things. We need a bit of empathy thrown in there, you know, as a different flavor, a bit of sweetness, let's call it that. You know, meanwhile, the negative motivation can be the spice that goes in there. And different people react differently to these things. But we also need
developing a bit of self-awareness as to what you need.
Yeah, what
are
do you
your
respond
drivers?
well? In what context does like a negative statement about you if you don't do this? What context will that actually work for you? And what context do you actually need a bit of empathy where you can say, all right, like just get this done. You know, this is going to be good for you. You know, you know it's going to feel good if you finish this workout or you go and do this thing. Okay, cool. You've kind of talked yourself through that. And then you can figure out your staples. Like, what are your more, you know, if we're going to continue that analogy of flavors, and like, what is your more bland, like, what's your rice? You know, what's something that just is part of your meal, that just works, is just there consistently each time. And people will find that. You know, you don't have to be having these hype conversations for absolutely everything and throwing that spice in there. You need some staples that'll just remain consistent. And often that's just knowing what you want and setting a realistic goal and knowing what that progress is going to look like. I mean, a bit of insight into my mind. I write my goals down every day. I write down my training plan. And that's probably my staple, is that I just see it written out. And then I do a bit of affirmations, like, yeah, I'm a strong guy, like, this is what I do. And that's normally enough for me to just stay consistent. I only seek motivation when it's missing. Otherwise, I am motivated enough to do it. And that's, you know, I don't seek hype when I'm fine.
And would you say maybe that's part and parcel of following a goal that is actually yours? Motivation is higher as a default. There are always going to be tough moments, but maybe far fewer of them. The ratio to, or the ratio of difficult times where you really have to kind of get a grip of yourself and push yourself to do something, and when it feels a little bit more intuitive and at the very least okay, that ratio is a lot different when you're following a goal that is genuinely yours. So I just find that thing really interesting with that kind of that vicarious goal that you mentioned earlier, and I think that's probably, as I said, one of the purposes. My objective for this dialogue is to kind of take a deep dive into why so many people set goals like up to 10 times, which would suggest that they have either objectively failed or believe they have failed up to 9. And that probably, you know, that sounds like it may well be one of them. think another thing that I'm interested in is how, especially when a goal is, because so many New Year's resolutions, I mean, some of them might be, I want to get promoted at work, I want to make more money, this is the car I want, etc. But there does seem, I mean, I work in the fitness industry, and as you do in the sport industry as well, so we're probably a little bit biased with kind of our selective attention, but there does seem to be this undercurrent of everyone that would set 5 New Year's resolutions, everyone in the flipping Western world, probably at least one of them is health focused.
Yeah.
I want to lose weight, I want to do this, I want to blah, blah, blah. And one of the things, again, in terms of kind of the Puritan just in either bucket at the end and not believing there's a spectrum, is the way that we could speak for a couple of minutes on how to help people develop an ability to indulge a little bit and still live a well-rounded, balanced life without experiencing shame.
Yeah.
Or guilt. So, and what the distinction is between the two.
Yeah. We'll definitely get onto those two kind of really uncomfortable emotions, shame and guilt. But we discussed this cost. So question 2 was, what does this goal cost? Question 1, it's so important that we know to know that it's our goal. Let's keep asking, why? Why do I want to achieve this? Okay, I want to lose weight, and I look down and I go, yeah, that's why. Can go, okay, great. But is losing weight a goal? What behaviors are you changing to achieve that goal? You might be changing 10 behaviors to achieve that goal. That's not one goal. That's 10 goals. Okay. So first thing is I'm going to eat more green vegetables. I'm going to sleep well, drink more water. I'm going to cut carbs in the evening. I'm going to start intermittent fasting. I'm
going to do all of these things every day.
Every day.
That's the only way.
And call it one goal, and wonder why I'm struggling, and wonder why my attention goes, and wonder, I didn't eat my greens yesterday. Oh, it's all gone. Meanwhile, you've done 9 other things right, and something suffered.
Yeah.
So, the SMART goal model holds true in kind of a lot of these contexts. Is the first point, just being specific, and losing weight. That's not specific. Whittle it down to actionable things. Like, what can you actually do?
So when you say specific for losing weight, you don't mean lose 10 kilos by X date. You mean elicit. So you mean focus on the behaviors that you want to change, and the habits that you want to introduce, rather than what they'll lead to. And then if you follow that, the result will handle itself. Absolutely.
So fantastic sports analogy is the score takes care of itself. And that follows the idea of looking at the process. So we're setting process goals. So if we're setting a goal that focuses on the process, we can just check if we've achieved the outcome at the end. We can always look up at halftime and check the scoreboard or whatever it is and check in to see, right, am I on track? But if we're setting process goals like, what do I actually need to do? Then we also feel in control. And having that sense of control is vital when aiming to achieve our goals. Otherwise, it can seem pretty random. So if you need to educate yourself or speak to a professional in your field on losing weight and find out what those practical steps are, I think that's the difference between knowing what to do. I know I need to lose weight. That is something I need to do. But what does doing that look like? What is the process? Because you might find that your goal is unrealistic, but you're only going to find that out once you start trying to do all these different things, but actually do them, not just spend 24 hours a day or whatever your waking life going, I mustn't eat. That's going to really be trying on your psyche. And if that obsession with maybe the outcome of, no, I'm trying to lose 10 kilos, when you go and have one thing that you think falls outside of your diet, but might not because you don't even know what your diet looks like because you haven't looked at the process, then that's where you will experience things like guilt and shame. I didn't hit my 10,000 steps today, which is obviously a thumb-sucked number. 10,000 steps for, who? Why?
Yeah, you mentioned this the other day. Yeah. That's just a complete fabrication that there's nothing that physiologically changes or your metabolism spikes.
We love round numbers.
10,001.
We love round numbers. I mean, how many times you speak to someone in the gym like, oh, how many reps are you doing? 10. Okay, why? Why 10? I don't know. Isn't that what we do?
Yeah,
we work in the metric system.
I've never thought about that with reps. And I always talk in ADC, as obviously you will know as you are a loving member of, that I think sevens are neglected.
Yeah. What's wrong with odd numbers?
Sets of 7, man. They've got a flipping bad rep.
Yeah.
And I even say, I was like, but if you're doing a set of 9 or a set of 11, you're a psychopath. But 7, and even then, that would feel really.
Yeah.
It's funny that I would actually have like this physical. Like if I looked at a program as like a set of 11, I'd be like, "The f is that?" I'd be like, "Someone's just trying to be trendy."
Yeah.
I was like, "That's
this
rubbish."
is novel.
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
Exactly, novelty chasing.
But that's how I feel about this 10,000 steps thing as well. It's like, you know, that's like saying that. I'm actually not even going to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm not.
See you getting angry at that.
Yeah, no, my Fitbit's been sitting in my drawer for a long time because I'm angry at it. Like, what does this 10,000 thing mean? And why do I never hit it? But I think, you know...
It's in your drawer, mate, and you're not wearing it, that's why.
Yeah, no, I don't walk anywhere. Yeah, I think I think process goals, so important. You know, that's a big gap. That's like having practical steps. We're looking at like, what do I know and how am I going to get there? You know, and that being the actionable points that you're in control of, you're responsible for. And these are things, again, they need to be things you want to do.
Yeah.
So I want to lose weight, great, but does eating more vegetables and less bread and wheat fall under that? Do I actually want to do that? Or is that going to be a complete drain on that energy resource we were talking about earlier? Because if I'm constantly trying to do something that does not resonate with me, that I do not like doing, that I just refuse to accept as part of reaching that goal, that's going to drain me every single time I try and do it. And eventually, that resource, that self-regulatory energy, is going to deplete and something's going to give. Because the fact is, when that resource is gone, now this goes into the whole neurochemistry thing of glucose is actually is brain food, and that almost goes into your brain power. Once that is sapped, this is, for example, why people that when we diet or when we exercise or do like cardio for a long time, like in all these examples, glucose depletes and we pretty much have this self-regulatory failure where we need a binge, we need to eat. Why do we crave sugar? Because actually that's what your brain needs to function. So we have this lapse, and that depletion actually occurs from trying to control things that kind of go against what you believe. So if I don't feel that eating my greens fits in with this goal, then every time I'm denying myself that and like suppressing my need for whatever I'm wanting because it doesn't fit I don't see it as being part of my goal or refuse to accept that, then that draws me closer to binging. As well as all the other stresses in life. I mean, if you're working hard and you've got other things going on in your life, that draws from the same resource. That's quite often why if we put a goal that we want to achieve at the end of the day, after we've had all these other things like family, lack of sleep, our working lives or whatever, drawing on that resource, that it's a lot more difficult to achieve. So your example of doing ROMWOD every morning, I know we spoke about this, and being in the morning, it's much more likely that you're going to achieve that because you get it done before anything else gets in the way.
Yeah, I mean, that for me is a huge thing. I mean, I offered in my Marine Mindset video that came out a week or so ago, I offered 3 tips. One of them was to focus on one thing at a time so that all of your new habit energy, both neurologically and psychologically, is focused on that. And the second one is to get it done as early in the day as possible. So if you've got this level of anticipatory anxiety on the run-up to having to do something new and this level of relief and pride and self-congratulatory kind of flipping pat on the back afterwards, you're on that spectrum of the time of day that you're awake, you've got that swing, right? So if I get up straight away in the morning, as an example, like you, I have a cold shower every single morning. And that, to be honest, isn't too bad now. But if that was something that I hated, so I have a cold shower in the morning, I'm like Biohack Central, have my electrolyte salts, put my red lights on, and then I'm straight into ROMWOD. And that's within about 30 minutes of me getting up. So and ROMWOD is still kind of new and a little bit frictiony and a little bit, do I have to? And I feel that resistance a little bit. And I've got half an hour worth of mild resistance, followed by 20 minutes of ROMWOD, which is absolutely fine, which, like most of these things, they're bloody fine when you're doing it. It's the run-up beforehand. And then afterwards, I've got, 12 to 16 hours worth of good work me, pat on the back, as opposed to doing something in the evening where you've got 16 hours of bloody dread on the run-up to this thing and only half an hour of relief. And that just sounds like an absolutely shit way to live. And obviously it might be spoken about in the extreme, but I think if you can do the one new thing that you want to do, if you can do it in the morning and get it done and get and really allow yourself to take pleasure in kind of, you know, putting a tick in that box.
Yeah, there's so much value in that, and there's that saying, "Win the morning." You know, "win the morning" is just like it's a really good phrase that, you know,
I like that.
I do incorporate now and then. Other times I, you know, practice a little bit of self-care, and my mornings are a little bit slower, and maybe I save what I'm going to do for the evening. But I know that I can do that, and if it's realistic, I will do it in the evening. Like, you know, if I've got training in the evening, I'm not going to then train in the morning and miss training in the evening or something. Although that happens too. That flexibility with that goal. If you don't have flexibility with your time, that's not so achievable. So I'm quite fortunate being self-employed. Bit of flexibility with my time, I can do that. But the morning is definitely the most important. Well, it's the most opportunistic time to achieve something. One of the classic psychology techniques is practice gratitude. And I think that's also a really good thing for the morning. So I would say, if you can achieve your goal in the morning, if it is applicable to the mornings, then yeah, go for it. That's going to send you off feeling really good into your day. It's going to make you feel replenished, sense of accomplishment. That can almost refuel and replenish that self-regulatory resource and set you off into your day at 100%. And then that might drain down as the day goes. But you will go into the day having done that. And gratitude can do the same thing. Yeah. So if you're feeling depleted, if you've woken up immediately still feeling stressed, you know, we talk about like a cortisol response in the morning. You know, when you wake up in the morning, your body releases cortisol, which leads to a blood sugar spike. I know this being diabetic, I can see it when I scan my little thing. So I get this little blood sugar spike called the dawn phenomenon. And a lot of us will have that cortisol spike in the morning. I think you've covered this in one of your other episodes when we talk about like that window for where you should have coffee, like wait until that spike's kind of come down. Yeah. Something along those lines.
Yeah,
but we can go into it in a moment. But I'm just going to assume I'm right, and we're going to carry on. But it's so important that we practice gratitude, and we kind of recover from that cortisol spike, because that cortisol spike can lead us into a fight or flight response. That's its whole purpose. You're ready for the day. If we're going to go back to like caveman kind of philosophy, is that like a oxymoron? But they were
deep thinkers.
They were, men, big foreheads. That's exactly the reason.
Yeah, exactly.
But that cortisol kind of response can leave us, especially if we are particularly stressed. There's going to be a lot more cortisol released, and the mornings can be quite stressful. So practicing gratitude, if your goal isn't morning oriented, so if you actually want to be training in the evenings, and that's your goal, that's what I want to spend more of my time doing. After my day, I want to be stretching, training, and then come back home feeling, you know, full of energy rather than going from office to home to couch to bed. Now, practicing gratitude in the morning, that'll be like, just write down a couple of things that you're grateful for. And they don't have to be financial or, you know, assets. Like the other morning I wrote down, I'm grateful for my ability to learn quickly. Now, that's completely subjective. There'll be many people, I'm sure, that go, actually, I learn quickly. This guy doesn't learn quickly. But I don't give a shit.
But even self-reported, subjective things like that are of value. If you have that experience of them.
Yeah. So I go into my day feeling confident. I needed to like kind of say that to myself. So I'm like, okay, I learn quickly, because you know what? My rest of the goals for the day was that I had things that I wanted to learn a few new things, and I wanted to go in. Am I clapping at the
No, it's all good, bro. It's all good.
And anyway, so I'm kind of going into a bit of my own stuff, but I think setting a subjective goal and setting something that is unique to you. It's also a really good way to identify if you have some self-confidence issues. If you really struggle to express gratitude for anything, especially talking about yourself, then maybe that gives you some insight into some other things going on. I speak to many people that are like, compliment yourself. They're like, I don't know what to say. I'm like, just write it down. You don't even have to show me. And they sit there for like 10 minutes and they're like, don't really know what to say. And it's normally in the presence of other people that people struggle to, you know, like they want to be humble, but they also then go, what can I say? And eventually, you know, you speak to people enough to the point where they, you know, I'll throw out compliments. I'll be like, oh, you're fantastic at this. You're brilliant at this. You know, you're making the effort to get someone like me to come in. You clearly care about your well-being. That's a positive. You know, you can find anything. There's so many things that are, you know, we can be grateful for about ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people listening should be grateful about their willingness to educate themselves and their willingness to change and to seek change, seek positive change. So yeah, along with winning the morning and how that can counteract maybe a stress spike is then practicing gratitude. Really, really good way to win the morning too.
Yeah, man, that sounds awesome, and I agree with that. And I think that's a very British thing with kind of the last bit of what you covered then, just that we're typically very non-expressive, and even if we were to say something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm really chuffed with myself for having not smoked a cigarette in a week," there would be this internal narrative in many people, especially in the UK, that'd be like, "Oh God, is everyone going to think I'm arrogant for saying that I actually did something right?" And that is a not very redeeming part of kind of British culture. But overall, with everything that you just mentioned, I've kind of written a couple of things down.
Yeah.
From the sponsoring question or questions of why do people set the same goal so frequently and continue to fail, and then how can they potentially not develop a bad narrative and continue on to actually achieving that? Self-forgiveness is kind of seems to be a big kind of theme with that it's okay not to do something 100% of the time, and again accepting
a lapse
the fact
is
that
not a relapse.
Exactly, and accepting the fact that it's a spectrum, and if you introduce something and you do it 5 days a week instead of 7, well, back in the mid-December you weren't flipping doing it at all.
Yeah.
So you've got to look at progress as progress, and you know that we should be aiming, the objective should be progress, not kind of perfection, really. Is it actually your goal, and looking at that kind of the vicarious goal or kind of mimetic desire there, and making sure that truly it is actually something that we care about and it's something that we want, not a desire or an objective that we've just inherited because our parents tell us that we should want it, or it's something our friends are doing, or someone that we look up to, or are inspired by on flipping Instagram is also doing it, but it is actually truly ours. Focusing on one thing at a time, and that's what I've done. I've forced myself, and I've been like, I will allow myself to start training in the mornings once I've done ROMWOD every single day of January. Yeah. And then almost it's like I'm giving myself a reward of allowing myself to try and introduce a new habit, but I need to prove to myself that I can do it, and really being kind of focused on that, and also being focused on ensuring that you're process driven, not purely objective driven, and really playing devil's advocate to your own goal and to what the cost would be, and be like, no, really truly manage your expectations as to what that's going to look like, and being aware that something else is probably going to have to suffer if you're going to be investing time, effort, energy, and money into this new thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've covered those in quite a bit of detail, and I really want to just latch on to a practical tip for establishing whether a goal is actually yours.
Yeah.
I feel like this can be really difficult. And for me, the tell-all kind of answer to that is, how will it actually make you feel if you achieve that? So for me, I really identify as being a strong person, like physically strong. I like doing things that show that to me. When I lift something that I couldn't lift before, or something that I lifted before feels lighter, I get a real joy out of that. And if anything engaging around that, I mean, there's different facets, but just talking about the strength stuff is that I care and I'm proud of myself. I feel pride. I feel like I've accomplished something. And I know so many people that they just can't relate. It's like, because we're different. So they do plenty of things that make them proud.
Yeah.
That I'm like, I'm not interested. That doesn't mean that what they're doing isn't valuable. Just like when I say I go and lift heavy stuff and I go put it back exactly where I found it as if nothing happened, it's often how I describe my training. People can't relate with that, but I'm like, I love it. I go home and I tell my wife, and she's like, she started to humor me and
pretend she's as excited as you
puts
are.
her phone down. It's like, okay, tell me about it.
That's great, babe. Well done.
Yeah, exactly.
What colour were the weight plates? Wow.
No, I'd never gotten that far. But yeah. But because it makes me proud, then I know it's worth doing.
But it's genuinely
mine.
internally validated.
Yeah, that's mine. So I'd say go and find something, or really think about it. When have I done this before? So go through your experience. What have you done before that you've really enjoyed, that you've gotten this really this increased feeling of pride and you just enjoyed it. Because I think seeking happiness in what we do is a fantastic goal.
Yeah.
So if going and lifting weights makes me happy, and I've gone and done that instead of something else, I'm really not going to regret it. And if we're going to pin that into something else, like if you love your work, like I love my work, and when I achieve something, when I learn something new, just like if someone's busy, like does their job really well, setting a goal that gives you that sense of happiness from accomplishing something that you actually care about. Do not go and compare yourself to other people and go, well, it doesn't really matter in the bigger picture. No, it's yours. You love it. Do it well, and set goals that are going to increase that.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, how you identify that it's yours, if it makes you feel good.
That's sick, bro. Genuinely, man, massive volume of flipping bags of pearls of wisdom there. So, mate, really, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your time. I would like to get you on the show again. Do you confirm that you will?
Oh, yes,
Sensational.
definitely. Lots more rambling.
Yeah, no, I like it. And I think that specifically that's a really, really good place to start with your field of expertise. And I think that's going to offer a lot of people of all ages a hell of a lot of value and a lot to think about and a lot of applicable wisdom. And that's really what I try to kind of focus on this channel, is not being overly scientific and purely conceptual with this stuff. It's like, okay, so how can we, this is knowledge, how does that become practical and applicable so it becomes wisdom? And I think you've done that in spades. So thank you very much for coming on, mate.
No, it's been
Have
a pleasure.
sick day, and I look forward to competing with you in a few weeks.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Oh,
Definitely.
yeah. I will not be snatching 150.
Me neither.
No.
Me neither.
Well, there we go. We can both stay in the swamp of mediocrity, but be happy together.
Exactly.
Sounds
Perfect.
like a pleasure.
I mean,
Cheers,
I'm happy with it.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers. Thanks for that.